Good morning, my beautiful ladies, and welcome to Lingerie and Lattes. I'm really excited to be presenting this new episode. If you don't know who I am, my name is Olivia Tramaga. I founded Vulcanability back in, I believe, April of 2020, so 4 years ago already, as a way for women to connect back to their bodies, develop monogamous relationships, and thrive within them. So welcome to today's subject. I have actually been reading a quite interesting book based on partnerships and specifically marriage dynamics. It's called Intimate Partners by Maggie Scarf. And I picked this up, I believe, in just a secondhand shop in New York. I think it was called Alabaster Bookshop. So it's around the corner from Strand. Much more unique selection, in my opinion. And she gets into an interesting subject here, which talks about how people can replay dynamics of their past without actually knowing that they exist. So what do I mean by that? Many times she is a journalist and she would interview couples and dive into their family history. And through that experience, there was resemblances or certain patterns that would replay themselves, even if a daughter didn't know that a mother or a grandfather or somebody within their lineage experienced the same exact dynamic before. So a very clear example of this is, let's say, somebody marrying into a alcoholic and creating a family structure where the mother is always picking up the pieces, so kind of cleaning up, helping the children be in a safe bubble, whereas the father is his tyrannical self. And let's say that that's a bit of a clear example. Obviously, every child would have, at a certain point, come to understand that daddy is not really himself usually. So a different example that she's provided us was actually a family that the two young newlyweds got eloped, and after a little bit of an interview process, she actually found out that either it was the woman or the man's father and mother actually also eloped and didn't share that information with anyone else. So why do I bring this up? Because have um, I have a lot of interest in this subject and wondering how we live in so many dysfunctional relationships and how little people place a value upon love and how to create a sustainable relationship. It seems that we've been through this very, very large revolution around sexuality and around freeing our bodies within their experience of pleasure, which is a big topic of mine. At the same time, I feel like this revolution has completely omitted women and how they can actually experience pleasure. We've been focused a lot more on creating this cry of having the freedom to sleep around versus getting deep into our monogamous relationships and figuring out how to create a sustainable marriage, how to create a sustainable family. That's actually where my interest started to develop, is when I noticed that based on my personal experience in childhood, I really wanted to create something different as a family structure for children. And I noticed that the only way to really do that is to have a harmonious partnership with a man. And then from that solid foundation, give my children the experience that I didn't have growing up. So the whole structure of love and relationships and intimacy is, to me, very closely related to going in deep with one person. And the only way we're able to not recreate patterns is if we become conscious of what is played out within our family. And we can only do this to a certain degree because a lot of people, I actually had a different discussion with my sister, I believe many weeks ago, maybe a few months ago at this time. We spoke about how growing up, no one ever talks about the different dynamics that they've had or different relationships that they've had. They always present themselves as if the one person they ended up with is everything that's the only person that's ever been in their life. And while that is honorable, it's also deceitful because it omits the atrocities that have happened along the way. If somebody has committed adultery and it's basically swept under the rug, it sets up the future for your potential daughter or son or your grandson or your granddaughter to then replay your patterns because nobody is speaking about the big elephant in the room. And I have noticed that the more we kind of shun the discussion around what it means to be in a relationship and how difficulties can actually enhance the love you feel for someone else, that to me becomes an easy escape route in the modern world, because we are so focused on creating a relationship that seems to be good on the outside. Everything's a lot more fake in that way, or surface level, because of social media and because you can essentially present yourself as anyone you want to be perceived as. It's not authentic. So the more focus we've put on creating modern relationships, having women be freed and liberated in their sensuality, there is actually no work that gets done in order for a woman to experience that sort of pleasure. Many women have reached out to me, even people that I have always looked up to as mentors, or people who have had intimacy from a younger age, or people who seem to be extremely experienced in this area, telling me that they've never even had an orgasm and they've never actually experienced pleasure, despite being in many situations where that's supposed to be what you're experiencing. So I like to kind of take a step back and notice, why is this? Why are we so focused supposedly on body pleasure, and then we go out and seek it, but we don't actually experience it? And again, no one's really talking about that aspect. They're just screaming that everyone should be free to do as they wish. And while that is a noble idea in a society, you have to educate people, one, where these beliefs have come from. Basically, all of the data that supports any sort of modern sex theory is based upon Kinsey, Pomeroy, and one third researcher, which has been published, I believe, in the late 50s and also early 60s. And everyone seems to be standing on these giants' shoulders without actually looking into the data. And I have both of those physical copies of those books, and I've looked into the data. Pretty much all of their information has been received from people who sexually abuse children, people who abuse others, prisoners, because no regular standard American citizen really wanted to interact with these researchers based on their weird questions. And so all of the beliefs we have around love and sexuality are based upon prisoners and child abusers and their behaviors. And now we've basically taken this very small subsection of society and basically put a blanket statement over everyone else's experience within sexuality. So why am I bringing all that up? Let's bring it back into the family. The more we understand who we are and where we've come from and what kind of dynamics existed within our family lineage, the more we can start to create the patterns within ourselves, noticing how, let's say, without any sort of emotional intelligence existing in a family structure, you're now a lot more inclined to be with somebody who is emotionally unavailable to you, because that's what you identify as a male love. Or if there's somebody who has been extremely needy, let's say there's a man who has had an extremely needy mother and has always been catering to the mother role, perhaps they find themselves in a relationship where their girlfriends are always in that needy state and are always placing their own desires over the relationships or the partners. This is extremely common. So the more we're able to kind of shake ourselves free from the shackles holding us from the past, the more we're able to create conscious partnership. And conscious partnership doesn't really require you to go outside of the partnership and seek bodily pleasure, which again, everyone is wired differently, and I'm understanding of that. However, for me and my following and my interest lies in creating those harmonious monogamous relationships, because to me, those tend to be the strongest. And I always correlate this with the idea of one company being a consulting company. And it's easy to think that polyamory is an interesting, noble idea. However, if you compare it to this business example I'm going to share, if one company does consulting for multiple projects, there are certain projects they're going to be more involved in. There's going to be certain clients they are just getting better along with, and are probably, there's on certain levels a ranking of which clients and projects are taking top priority. It's the same within relationships and how people approach monogamy or non-monogamy. If you still have multiple relationships regarding your emotions and also intimacy, there are certain people you will get along with better, and there's certain people you simply will be more attached to and involved with. So the idea that you can be in love with multiple people at once, to me, doesn't really hold up as an argument. Again, however, people can do as they wish, and depending on their level of consciousness, they will act upon their primal desires. I would like to kind of bring this all home, and I I created this workbook that is really meant for someone to look into how they relate to love and intimacy and their physical body, and start to recognize maybe what subconscious patterns are ruling their decisions within life. Because many times we think we're going to get into a new relationship and everything is going to be different, but many of times people recreate the same patterns they've had in previous relationships. And again, I've heard this from women that I've worked with intimately. They will think that they've done all this work upon themselves and be open to a new experience, only to find themselves replaying the same cycle. So why does this happen? Understanding again what your lineage is and what your connection to both parents was and is, and understanding perhaps how you perceived your parents' relationship and your grandfather and grandmother's relationship. Some people don't know where they come from. However, you've always had an influence in your life growing up. So you can start to connect the dots and maybe see how, let's say, if you've been led to believe that you can mistreat women and they're always going to be there for you, standing by your side, maybe you're not going to be the most faithful husband, because there's nothing challenging that belief. You have grown up in a household where that's normal, and that's almost congratulated that a woman would stand by someone's side despite their misbehavior. So going in deep to your family and going in deep to your history, personal history, with regards to these subjects, can help you explore a lot of your own self. And this workbook is only $12. I am going to post a link under this video if anyone's interested into looking into that. And going through this process, if you're not interested in purchasing the workbook, I can understand that. However, it is an investment in yourself, and it can get you to explore your own mind in a different way and kind of help you physically visualize it, and also start to notice the somatic responses when you bring up a certain subject. So I was sharing this earlier on my social media, but one of the practices that I have in there is a body response to certain words. So for me, the idea of having a relationship or being in a relationship brought up a lot of anger and angst and disgust and repulsion. So noticing, again, those are just feelings. How did I respond within my body? Maybe there was more of like a clenching in my gut, or maybe there was a tensing of my shoulders. Having those feedback jotted down and being able to actually look at your responses to this life and to these words can be extremely helpful, because then again, when a trigger shows back up, you can start to identify, oh yeah, that's why my shoulders are tensing up. It's because I'm kind of thinking about this person or this concept of love. And the more we're able to start to track our own patterns, we can recreate new ones. And I'm sorry, not recreate, but simply create new ones. And we can move forward in life instead of constantly being stuck in the same position because of where we've grown up in, or how we've been mimicking other people's patterns. And I have this as well in my Vulcan Ability library, but there's a lot of negativity around relationships in TV shows, in kids' TV shows, adult TV shows. It really doesn't matter, but there's a lot of misbehaviors that usually get treated as an advantage or something to be celebrated within a relationship, whether that is adultery, whether that is an extremely inappropriate relationship, or any sort of any one of those subjects. It can typically be used as either a point of humor or a point of relating to the normal person just watching that, because maybe they've experienced that, if they have somebody who's experienced that. And when we start to shed light on all of these shadows that are ruling our relationships and our ability to receive love in our lives, we can we can do better and we can accept better in our lives. So I'm going to leave it there. I hope you all have an absolutely amazing week. And just a final card pull from the self initiation deck that one of my amazing clients actually gifted to me after we did a 6-month program. I'm going to see what the message is for us today. I trust that who I am is a contribution longing to be received by the world around me. So again, I trust that who I am is a contribution longing to be received by the world around me. So how does this apply to you? Start to notice your contribution to yourself and your contribution to how you relate to your own experiences in life influence the relationships you have and influence everything that you do in life. And again, when you know better, you can typically do better. So with that note, have an absolutely amazing week, and we shall see each other next Sunday.